So Lala asked, what's the first step to starting a nonprofit? So that's a really good place to start off today. So every state has a different process for how you start, but I will give you the overall general information. So obviously, before you even file your paperwork, you need to know what the purpose of your organization is going to be. So you need to know who you're going to help and how you're going to help them. If you don't have your mission statement put together already, I would recommend you go to nonprofitfornewbies.com and sign up for the free nonprofit startup planner. We help you put together your mission statement, and it includes also like a full checklist of the steps to starting a nonprofit. But essentially, what you'll want to do is you'll file your articles of incorporation within your state. So you would go to the Secretary of State, and they might have a template for you depending on what state you're in, or you might have to draft them from scratch. Sometimes you can file it online, and sometimes you have to file it by mail. It just depends. But either way, it's usually called an Articles of Incorporation or an Articles of Organization. And then there's going to be a filing fee. So like it could be as low, like Texas is $25, or it could be a little bit higher, like where I'm at in Maryland, it's $220. So whatever the fee is, you would attach that to the articles and you would submit it to your state. Once your articles of incorporation are approved from the state, then that means you are officially a nonprofit organization within your state. Now, you do have the option to either achieve 501c3 status or go for a fiscal sponsorship. So, if you want to have your own 501c3, which means you can apply for your own grants, if someone donates to your organization, they can have a tax write off, which will typically qualify you for corporate sponsorships and other things of that nature. Then you can go and seek 501c3 status. You would seek that with the IRS. So that means that any revenue you receive, also you don't have to pay taxes on that revenue. So in order to do that, you need to have an EIN number, which is free. You can get that on the IRS website. You need to have your bylaws and your conflict of interest policy. I would definitely recommend we have a how to start your nonprofit course. It has the template for the bylaws and conflict of interest policy. I walk you through articles of incorporation filing. We walk you through the EIN number. And then finally, the 1023 Easy application is what most nonprofits will qualify for. You do need to find out whether or not you need the 1023 Easy or the long form 1023. So generally speaking, if you're a church, a hospital, a school, or you're going to offer a substantial amount of financial literacy, then you want to file the long form 1023 for 501c3 status. But other than that, or if you have like a written or verbal promise of $50,000 or more within the next 3 years, then you want to just go ahead and do the long form application. That's a little bit more expensive, so it's about $600, I believe, is the filing fee. And then it's like a longer application, so it's about 20 pages, and they're going to ask you for like a program narrative, which is a description of your programs, a budget. They're going to ask you to attach your bylaws and your conflict of interest policy. They're obviously going to ask for your EIN number. They might ask for an attachment of your articles of incorporation, and then a bunch of other stuff. So it's a longer application. But most nonprofits, if those qualifications don't apply to you, then typically you can do the short form application, which is also known as the 1023 Easy. And with the 1023 Easy, it's $275 to file, so that's the filing fee, and it's like a little shorter, so it's about 4 pages. So instead of saying, instead of attaching your articles of incorporation, they might just say, do you have your articles of incorporation, yes or no? Yes. Okay, so obviously, with your programs, instead of asking for a full program narrative, they just ask for your purpose statement. So it's a little bit easier than just a full-on application for the long form 1023 if you qualify for the 1023 Easy. Typically, that's going to be about 3 months to hear back from the IRS. So all in all, you could expect about between 3 to 5 months for you to completely be 501c3 tax exempt with the IRS. Stephanie, the deadline to file taxes for your nonprofit. So just like I just talked about, if you have your 501c3, then typically well, not typically, if you have your 501c3, then you're going to file what's called the 990. It's very important that you file this. Most nonprofits have a calendar year of December, which is something that you would put on your long form application or your short form application when you file. On that application, that's when you say your calendar year, and your calendar year determines when your 990 is due. Most people's calendar year is going to be December, so you're going to file your 990 by May 15th. You must file this every year, and if you miss 3 years, then you'll lose your 501c3 status. So you want to make sure you take care of that. Unfortunately, it's very, very, very easy. It's almost like setting up a Facebook account. Like you just go in and they ask for your name. They might ask for like updated board information, your EIN number, and a bunch of security questions. And the security questions takes like 3 of the 5 minutes is just them asking like a bunch of crazy security questions, security paraphrase, security code. Like it's just really crazy, but it's really easy to do. And you're gonna file if you receive, I believe it's 50,000 or less. Just make sure. But when you read the IRS website, but if it's 50,000 or less that you've received, which is most of our nonprofits who've been, who are within 0 to 2 years of existence, then you can file the 990 postcard, which is the easy one to file. Once you pass that revenue, then you want to go ahead and do the longer form 990. So there are other 990s based on how much revenue you receive. And then obviously, if you've received more than $50,000, you want to start looking into a bookkeeper or an accountant to help you file your 990. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Hi, Michelle. Can you please tell us why you would start a for-profit business instead of a nonprofit? That's a really, really good question. So, for-profit versus nonprofit. You have to keep in mind with a nonprofit, number one, there's a few things that, some people aren't comfortable with the structure of a nonprofit, especially because you put so much into it, like it is your baby, you invested your money, you invest your time, you invest your energy. Like people invest their whole lives into their organization, but with a nonprofit, no one person owns the organization. So actually with a nonprofit, typically funders and the IRS want to see that you have 3 board members. So at a minimum, a board president, a board treasurer, and a board secretary. And I would actually recommend that you don't be on your board. I would actually recommend that you be the founder and CEO if you plan to pay yourself and sustain that nonprofit, which I'm assuming if you're debating between a for-profit and a nonprofit, you will eventually want to pay yourself. So, if you want to pay yourself, I would recommend you stay off the board because the board is supposed to be 100% volunteers. Now, what comes with that is sometimes, the board and the CEO have conflict. Their board and the administration have conflict. The board has the final say in all of the decision making for the organization. That's what funders want to see. They want to see checks and balances. They want to see that, you receive a $20,000 grant here, then you get a $50,000 grant. It's free money. So you're not paying, there's no goods or services exchanged. They're giving you the money. It's a grant. And then on top of that, you're not paying taxes on that money if you have your 501c3. So obviously they want to have as many people making decisions in a split of power. So they want to see that the board is voting and making the majority of the larger decisions, and then the administration, which would be the founder and CEO, but the person who's being paid is performing the day-to-day activities for the organization. So that's one thing, is that you're putting your heart and soul into something that you don't technically own, and then you don't get the final say so. Your board of directors technically has the final say so. And when I was just reading, we were talking about this, I think it was like the beginning of January, with Black Girls Code. There was a founder and CEO. She was pretty much like she put her heart and soul into the organization. They were sponsored by like Under Armour and all these big companies. She had won all types of awards. I think it was like a Forbes award for like top engineer. That she was like really doing her thing. She was doing a great job. I don't know how the internal systems were going, but there was conflict between the board and her as the founder and CEO. Obviously, she was being paid to run the organization. It was a huge organization, where they had like summer camps for girls and things like that. And pretty much she said she woke up, so it had to have been like around Christmas. She said she woke up on like 5 days before Christmas and just received a text from the board saying that she was no longer going to be serving, as the CEO of the organization. So they were, asking her to step down. Now, obviously, that made, public news. So I don't know if the board ended up changing their position on that. But, she had like a bunch of attorneys, a bunch of, I'm sure top engineers, big name brand, CEOs on her board. All of it, that is great to have degrees and experience, but you have to have a board who, ethically you guys get along. You guys are still making ethical decisions, but culturally you guys are on the same page, about who makes the final decisions in the organization. If you're the CEO, then it's okay for you to make the final decision, but your board has to be on the same page with that. So if you're, it just depends on the culture and you want to establish that up front, or else, you might find that a nonprofit was the worst decision you ever made if you don't get along with your board and you're trying to do things and you guys are at a standstill because you can't put things together internally. So that's one thing, two things really for the for-profit versus nonprofit. And then one other thing you want to think about is that, let's say you receive a grant for $20,000. So, typically if like I'm a consultant, so if I close a deal for $20,000 with a client, then I can take that, I put it in my business bank account. But if I wanted to go to Disney World tomorrow, I could go to Disney World. Like no one's stopping me or telling me what I can do with my money, in my for-profit, nonprofit for newbies. However, with a nonprofit, it's a little bit different. So typically, if you were to write a grant asking for $50,000, let's just say, then you would create a budget, and 10 to 20% of that budget is typically going to go towards personnel expenses. So your salary, maybe no more than 30%. So let's make it easy. If we had $10,000, 3,000 of that would go towards the person who's running the program. Then maybe another 3,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 would go towards operational expenses, which is like your internet, your rental agreement, pretty much anything that you need to run the organization as a whole. So, like not specific program specific, but like just travel expenses, a course that you took on leadership training, whatever is needed to run the organization as a whole. That might be 20% of your budget. So 2,000 of that $10,000. And then, so that's 5,000 altogether. And then the other 5,000, typically a funder wants to see that the majority of your funding is going towards a program. So that would be, if it is a summer camp, it would be like the summer camp location. It would be, the food, the meals for the children, any activities, the purchases that you need to make in order to operate that activity. So that's a program expense. So you have to have a budget, and then when you get that $10,000, you have to spend that money accordingly. So if you're the type of person who you just want to take the money that you make and use it, then that's probably not, use it how you want to use it. That's not always going to work because there are unrestricted grants and there are restricted grants. And then no matter what, you can't just put the money in your personal bank account. You want to have only 20 to 30% of all the revenue you receive going into your personal account. So you definitely want to keep that in mind. On my YouTube, which again, nonprofitfornewbies.com, under the cafe, we have the free startup planner. We have our YouTube, which is Nonprofit Newbies TV. That's like free trainings. I do them typically, like once a month or every 2 weeks. And then I do them live and then I post them on my YouTube. And you'll see we have one that's, I want to quit my job and go full time in my nonprofit. How do I do that? And I pretty much did a full live training. I don't think that one was live. I think that was just a video, but it's a training talking about what you should have in place. You could do a for-profit and nonprofit relationship together in order to secure your position and being able to operate the nonprofit without depending on grant funding. So I would definitely recommend checking out that YouTube video on my website as well, if you were to maybe possibly considering having a for-profit and a nonprofit as well. Okay. What if the founder has no desire to be paid? Is CEO still the best position? And what's the difference in what the president and CEO does? If the founder has no desire to be paid, then I would recommend, it's okay for you to be on your board. So typically you can have what's called a working board. And a working board is a board, like I had a client, Joyce, I don't know if she's in here today, but it was her and two friends. And I think for the past like 10 years, they had been serving the homeless. And at a certain point, they were like, okay, this is coming out of pocket, which is fine, but I feel like we could do a lot more if we receive grant funding. So as a group, they went in and applied for 501c3 status. But that wasn't, for the purpose of them being paid at all. They just wanted to be able to write corporate sponsorship letters and requests, because a lot of corporations do have money available. I have clients who get gift cards and gift baskets from Target, grant funding, obviously. So there are different benefits to incorporating a nonprofit and seeking 501c3 status, and it doesn't always have to be that you want to be paid. If you're not going to be paid, again, it's okay. Like all three of those ladies were on their board, so that's no issue. So she said, what's the difference in the president and CEO and what they do? So again, the board of directors is made up of a board president, a board treasurer, and a board secretary. CEO is a salary position on the administration side, okay? So board members are volunteers, CEO is a paid position. Now, sometimes people call the CEO the president, not to be mistaken for the board president. So CEO and president is the same exact role. Board president is a different role. So board president is serving on the board, that's 100% volunteer. In the nonprofit startup planner, I have the outline of the basically a description of each board role, so you can use that as well. So the nonprofit startup planner is free. It's on our website, nonprofitfornewbies.com. Under the cafe, you'll see it. Yes, you want your board to help you make decisions, but you also want them to help you fundraise, and you want them to help you with what was I going to say? You want them to help you fundraise, and you want them to help you by board giving is what it's called. So typically a lot of funders will ask whether or not you have 100% board giving. What that means is, does 100% of your board contribute financially to your organization? Because they want to know, the people who are responsible for the organization, are they even giving to the organization? So you want to consider that as well. You want to consult your board members on that. Typically, I would recommend whatever they can afford. If it's a monthly payment of a certain amount that they can contribute to the organization, it can be $1, it can be $10. 100% board giving is 100% board giving. And you just want to make sure that you can say yes. And you want to make sure that you're not excluding people just because they can't afford to give $100 a month. If you serve a homeless population, then it might be helpful for you to have someone who was once homeless on your board, so that they can provide insight in helping you make decisions. But that person might not be able to contribute as much as an attorney on your board might contribute financially. Now, the information and the insight is still, in comparison, great insight from both ends. But as far as the people on your board, you want to make sure you have a diverse board, and you don't want money to be a hindrance to people joining. You just want to make sure that they are, and you can even do a fundraise or pay. So, helping you fundraise $500 a year per board member, or they can donate $500. So that's another way to do it. Yeah, you got it. So we have a budgeting 101 course as well. 20 to 30% of your budget should go towards personnel. I would recommend 20% go towards operational expenses, not educational, but operational is what it's called. And then the majority, the rest of the budget should go towards your program and services. Okay. And we break that down in more detail in the budgeting. I really need more one-on-one guidance. My program blew up in a blink of an eye. Melanie, that's good. That's a good problem to have, honestly. So we do offer one-on-one coaching. Go to my website and schedule a 30-minute introductory call. That way we'll talk about what you have in place. We need to make sure that your infrastructure is strong. That's what typically happens with my clients who grow fast because their program was very much needed. They start to just move and just serve, which is awesome. But we need to make sure that your infrastructure is strong. So you have all the beginning stage research and paperwork, that your articles of incorporation is filed properly. Even if you were approved, there might be provisions that need to be added so you're in compliance. We need to talk about all of that stuff. We need to make sure infrastructure is strong. We need to talk about your business planning, and then we need to talk about grant readiness and what you can do to prepare your organization for funding. So I would be happy to speak with you and put a strategy in place for you. You have to go to my website, nonprofitfornewbies.com, and then go to strategy session. Okay, so Sinclair asked, is it possible to structure the nonprofit exactly as envisioned, or is the structure out of your hands as a founder? What I mean by structure is program, designs, events. Oh, this is so good. Okay, so you guys are asking some really good questions. As far as structuring your organization, I always say, so in our board essentials bundle, I have a board orientation packet that I created for one of my clients, and he allowed me to share it. So it's a sample. It's in the courses section. Within that section, I have essentially a guideline for the expectations of your board. So you can't always put all that information in your bylaws, which are your bylaws are your internal policies that you submit to the IRS, and sometimes you might submit them to potential funders. You might not always want to put, the structure of your programs. You probably don't want to. The structure of your events and things like that in the bylaws. I would recommend you have a board orientation packet that outlines the expectations for decision making within your organization. That also prevents some of the cultural clashing, like we talked about with Black Girls Code earlier. And then I would also recommend that you have a business plan in place and share that business and strategic plan with your board when you onboard them. That way, if they're not on board with the different programs that you have in place, then they'll just say, hey, I don't think this is right for me. I will, if I want to support the mission, I might just be a volunteer, or I might just, donate. So I would recommend that you have a business plan in place. I would recommend that you choose board members who their vision aligns with yours, but ultimately, when it comes to decision making, again, the board does have the final say. So you want to be very careful on who you put on your board. Okay. Do corporations sponsor religious-based nonprofits? Adrian, it depends on the corporation. It depends on their mission. Just like nonprofits have a mission statement, a lot of corporations have a mission statement as well. So let's just say, for example, Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A, they're a for-profit that is religion-based. So they might give you a donation. If it's like AutoZone, like just randomly, like you're just writing to random corporations whose missions and their vision doesn't align with your organization's, then they might not sponsor you just because there might be, a nonprofit who helps children, who helps youth get into trade schools, and that might be something that is more reflective of their mission and the things that they stand for in their community. So it wouldn't just be solely based off of, because you're a religious-based nonprofit, no corporation will contribute. But if you have 501c3 status, which they do want to get that tax write-off, of course, as long as you have that, then I would just look for different businesses whose values align with your nonprofits. Okay. All right. Harriet said, I have my 501c3 since May 2021 and have been self-funding and not being paid. How do you word a grant asking for a grant to pay salaries? So you can either look for unrestricted grants, which are grants that don't have a restriction on how you fund the nonprofit, or you just write the salary into your budget. Contrary to popular belief, funders do want to see, in a lot of cases, that someone is being paid to run a program. So if they give you $10,000, it's great that the board is ultimately responsible for how the money is used and ultimately responsible for making sure that the money is used correctly. But at the same time, knowing that they have a program director who is making sure that, if they give you $10,000, that someone is out there every day making sure that program is running correctly, making sure that the participants are the beneficiaries or participants in the program are being properly served, that the money is being used correctly, that profits and expenses are being tracked correctly. Funders do like to see that. So don't be afraid, read the room, but don't be afraid to, add that into your budget, because they will ask you for an organizational budget and a program budget. And again, in our budgeting 101 on nonprofitfornewbies.com, we break down the budget in detail. Okay. If board members donate money, they can write it off on their taxes. Yes. If your board member does donate, you can give them a receipt for them to give to their accountant, and they can write that off. Absolutely. The same with the founder and CEO. If you invested, like let's say you invest $1,000 in your nonprofit to get started, then you can write that off on your taxes as a donation, or you can make it an accounts payable, which means that, when your nonprofit receives the funding back, they can pay you back for that. How can we get more community support and involvement? So that's a deep question, Mariatu. As far as community support goes, it's going to start off with a lot of networking, and I would start by building your board first. If you don't have a strong board, that's usually the main issue. We are hosting a 3-week board training in the Learning Academy. It's $38 a month to join the academy. I would check that out if you don't have a strong board right now. So Kim Stewart, she is our board development coach. She's amazing. She was executive director for like a regional cohort of YMCAs, and she was responsible for board development. So she's thebomb.com. She's going to be doing 3 weeks of training starting this Sunday, actually, and they're live, they're workshops, so we're 101. You can ask questions, and she's even going to have a training where you can bring your board to that training if you already have a board who you're like, listen, y'all need training because y'all don't know what y'all are doing and I don't know what you're supposed to be doing. We have an invite your board training that's going on in the academy. Or if you don't have your board yet, you can record the training and send it to your board to watch, before your first board meeting when you do get your board members. So that's something that might help. It's really difficult, when it comes to community support. You can network, you can do business cards, you can mention your organization to like literally every single person you know, but you're only one person. So if you have 3 other people who are doing that as well, your network is going to reach a lot farther, and you want to tap into your personal connections that you've made with people. You want to go to meet, I know it's hard with COVID, but you want to go places where people actually care about the community. So you want to, see if you have a local United Way. You want to see if there are any, local meetings for people who care about the communities that you're serving. You want to go to, if it's, real estate and real estate events, places where people are stakeholders in that community and care about improving it. That's how you start to get community support. And again, it's a lot easier if you have 3 other board members who are also doing the same thing and tapping into the resources and connections that they have. Okay. And if you're in the academy, please make sure you are here on Sunday for the live workshop in Nonprofit for Newbies Learning Academy. Any of our members, make sure you're there on Sunday because we're doing our first board development training. We've been doing grant readiness, so with our grant writer Nicole. So you guys want to make sure when we switch and we're starting to work with Kim, you're there, because now you're going to start to get some of those questions answered, and a lot of people have been talking about board development. So this is the best time to do it. And then the open office hours as well. Okay, what did I miss? So, Miss Holloway, I put the Nonprofit for Newbies link in the comments. So that's where the courses section is. Okay. The course that you might be talking about is the How to Start a Nonprofit course. Um, Jeannie, to go about legalizing your nonprofit, business, attorney, or legal, I want to LLC. Okay, watch this video over or go to my YouTube and I have a how to start a nonprofit video. www.nonprofitfornewbies.com. Everything is there. If you go to the cafe, you'll see my Nonprofit Newbies TV, which is my YouTube video. I'll walk you through the steps, and I just explained it like a little bit earlier when we first logged in. You don't want to start an LLC. That happens all the time. People file an LLC and then they got to start over. So just watch the video. You want to file what's called an Articles of Incorporation. The first thing I'll recommend, if you're a self-starter, watch my How to Start a Nonprofit course. That's on my website. Oh my goodness, I literally, like, every single step that you need to start your nonprofit is there, and you will save thousands of dollars. So I would recommend you take the course and just watch me, even when like I do the EIN application. Like that's free for you to file. But if you were to go to LegalZoom, they would probably charge you about $150, and it's like literally a 5-minute walkthrough for the EIN. So bylaws and conflict of interest policy, I think LegalZoom charges like $100 for that. I have the template that I've used for even with IRS audits. I've submitted to the IRS hundreds of times. So I know that this is the template that works. I recommend you start with our template. That way, if you need to submit it to a funder or you need to submit it to the IRS, you can, and you know that, it's something that you can use legally to operate your organization and your board. So all those templates are in there, step-by-step instructions for filing your articles, the provisions that you need to add to your articles in order to achieve 501c3 status, even if you already have your articles. So anyone on here who already has their articles of incorporation, I want you to go back and check and see if you have the provisions required by the IRS. So that is the purpose provision. You'll see these words in the provision, so you'll know what I'm talking about. The purpose, the limitation on activities, and the dissolution clause. Please make sure you have those in there because the state doesn't require it most of the time. So you will get approved by the state and still not have those provisions. If you don't, you need to file an amendment. Again, I recommend you watch the course, How to Start a Nonprofit. And then even sometimes people will file the 1023-EZ and it won't get audited by the IRS. And so they might not ask you to submit your articles. And then on your application, you don't know what you're answering. So it'll be yes or no questions. And you'll say, yes, I have the purpose provision. Yes, I have the limitation on activities provision. Yes, I have the dissolution clause, but you don't actually have it. So you're not in compliance, even though you were approved by the IRS. So just go back to your articles, even if you haven't started yet. Jeannie, make sure you do the articles of incorporation, not an LLC, and then check to make sure you add the provisions. Lisa, okay, this is going to be the last question for today. She said, can you use an EIN number for 2 different businesses? No, you want to keep your for-profit and nonprofit, or even 2 nonprofits, completely separate, especially with your for-profit and nonprofit. You want to have 2 separate business bank accounts, which you want to put, if it's your personal account, do not put your personal, like the money that you're using for your nonprofit, don't put it in your personal account. I don't want you to go to jail, okay? So any money, any revenue that you receive, just keep clean records because you don't want to get messed up. Things get sticky and messy. Go and check and see if you have a business bank account and a personal account. Any revenue that comes in from your nonprofit, you put it in your business bank account. If it's your personal money, then you put it in your personal bank account, okay? And I would even recommend, like, let's say, obviously you can't do this when you're first starting out because you need your EIN number to open up the bank account. But as soon as possible, if you are purchasing a printer for your nonprofit, if you're doing travel expenses, put that money into the nonprofit bank account. So if you know you were going to spend $50 today, you were going to go to Staples and buy some stuff for your nonprofit, take it from your personal account, put it in your business bank account, and then make a little budget or spreadsheet that just says accounts payable to founder and CEO, which means that that's the money that the nonprofit owes you back, just to keep clean records of how much you put in, or just keep a record of the donation receipt. Basically it's a donation receipt for yourself, indicating how much you've contributed and how much should be given back to you. Okay, I'm sorry, how much you can write off on your taxes. All right, so yep, you got it. So purpose clause, limitation on activities, and dissolution clause. You want to make sure you have those in your articles. Thank you. All right, guys, this was fun. I haven't done a Q&A in a while. I feel like I've been so formal and just teaching you guys one subject at a time. So I really enjoy just being a little bit more casual. Heidi, it's okay. Just join my open office hours. We can answer any questions you have. I know you're in the academy. Hey, girl. Yep, it's okay. I was really just going over nonprofit like 101 basics today. So, if you guys have any other questions that I didn't answer today and they're burning you in your soul, is something I can answer quickly, like I can text it to you, just send me a message on Facebook. I don't mind that. People literally message me all throughout the day. I don't care. It's okay to message my personal Facebook and ask me any questions that you have about nonprofit startup. If I don't know the answer, then I will connect you with somebody who does have the answer. We have at least 6 to 7 coaches and like 80 plus years of experience within our academy, staffing alone. Okay. Jen, you guys have a great day. Take care.